Everybody's safe, everybody's good, and luckily you are providing some much needed rest and relaxation from the troubles of the world tonight. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, I'll try to do a little bit here. I'll do my share.
So we do this every 4 p.m. every Monday and Thursday for the Scouts channel. And this is a special edition here with you at 8 p.m. Right now, the show is called Assorted Nonsense with Anthony. Anthony McCarron from SNY named the show. But John from the New York Mets, Cincinnati Reds, Hall of Famer for the Mets, MLB all-time lefty saves leader. Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm John Franco, former pitcher for the New York Mets, and just doing my thing, enjoying life, and trying to help out as much as I can with the city here, going through what we're going through, the coronavirus, and hopefully everybody stays safe and sound, and tip our hats to the medical workers, the doctors, the nurses, and the police, firemen, everybody who's keeping us safe and trying to get through this hard times.
100%. Before we really get down to it, we let our guests change the name of the show every time. So there's a lot of goofy minor league teams, the Albuquerque Isotopes, San Antonio Missions. You played in those cities, Binghamton. So Assorted Nonsense with Anthony had a good run. What should we call the show, John?
I played for the Albuquerque Dukes that one year, so I thought the Duke Show.
The Duke Show. That's a good name. I like that. All right, so let's just jump into it. We generally have a good amount of kids and players that are watching when we do these. And so as a kid, you played in the parade grounds in Brooklyn. You played for Gil Hodges. What do you remember from your youth baseball career in New York City?
It was great back then in the 70s. There was so much competition here in the city, all through high school and then to the parade grounds. You had organizations like the Bonnies, Youth Service, Ty Cobbs. I played for Gil Hodges and Ty Cobbs. The Cadets. Those are very, very competitive organizations, and we always had some great games in the parade grounds. The other thing about the parade grounds was when you played in the parade grounds, you had to worry about the soccer players running over your center field.
Right.
So that was probably the biggest thing. And you always wanted the early games, the 10 o'clock or the 12 o'clock games, because if you got the 3 o'clock game and you had a pitch, the hole in the rubber, you like pitching uphill because it was so deep, the hole, and the batter's box was so deep, you were running uphill every time you hit it or pitching from uphill. So it was kind of tough, but the competition at that time, it was great. I mean, every organization has some really top players, and it's real competitive. And we just enjoyed it. At the time that I was with Ty Cobbs, Gil Hodges was great. But I think the best time is when I played for Ty Cobbs, and we had a great coach named Nick Mangieri. He was really good. I'm sorry, not Mangieri, Mango, and he was really good. He really straightened all us young guys out and taught us discipline.
I hear your dad, we'll talk about your dad in a minute, but I hear your dad really appreciated Billy Blitzer because of the discipline he had as a coach. You would always go check Billy's teams out.
Yeah, Billy was one of a kind, and he's still doing it. I mean, he's, I don't know, 100 years old and he's still scouting. So, but he's a one of a kind guy. He knows talent. He loves his job. He loves baseball, and that's why he's been so successful at what he's been doing.
Did you ever meet Gil Hodges, or was that you never got the chance?
I never got the chance to meet Gil Hodges. I've heard a lot about him. I met his wife Joan, his son Gil Jr. at a bunch of Met-related functions, but unfortunately, I never got to meet him. My dad was a big Brooklyn Dodger fan growing up, and I've heard a lot about Gil Hodges. So unfortunately, I did not get a chance to meet him.
Billy says thanks. Gary Perone thinks that was pretty funny, by the way, your comment about Billy there. So you've been pretty instrumental in New York City baseball since your playing days ended. Seeing all the youth initiatives that you've been involved with, you helped start the Borough Cup. Can you talk about the Borough Cup a little bit?
Well, the Borough Cup really was the brainchild of, unfortunately, Greg Carton, Gary Perone, and myself. We all got together, and we decided to try to create something here in the city to where the kids could just stay here in the city, because a lot of youth baseball here in the city, a lot of organizations travel to other parts of the country, other states to play in tournaments, which are great, but very expensive. And we wanted to do something here in the city to where all the kids would come together from all the different boroughs. You know, you get kids from Manhattan playing against kids from Queens, Staten Island against kids from Brooklyn, and that's how you form a camaraderie. And you know, when I was playing, you know, I played against Sean Dunston, a guy named James Harris, Luis Figueroa, uh, uh, Angel Rosario, uh, Willie Rosado, Dallas Green, and we all played against each other, but we all knew each other because we were still, you know, here in Brooklyn playing in the parade ground. So what we try to form is something where you could have a nice tournament where, you know, a Brooklyn team will have to go somewhere in Queens, or the Queens team will have to go somewhere in the Bronx and play. And these kids will get to know each other. And as they grow together, you know, whether it's 9 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, and eventually they'll come up together, and they might wind up on the same travel team later on where they already known each other, or they might play against each other in high school. So we wanted to form that so we would get the kids an opportunity to stay home, play in a New York tournament. And also the topper was, you know, the championship games for the older kids were at Yankee Stadium, and the younger
Which is
kids,
pretty cool.
you know, the Yankees have been great. They've been very hospitable to us and given us their stadium. And also the Mets giving us the minor league stadium in Brooklyn using the Cyclone Stadium. So it's a real thrill for these kids to play in these fields. And believe it or not, it's great for the kids, but you should see the parents, how crazy they get and how
Oh my
fun,
God, it's like their dream.
fun they have. And it's really a good thing. And I give, you know, Gary and Zach a lot of credit, who have been running this thing from day one. And it still continues to do well. You know, our first year we had, 150 teams, and it's still growing. You know, we have our little bumps in the road here and there, but it's enjoyable just to see the smiles on the kids' faces when they're playing. Even when they lose, they're winners because they got to the championship round, and they get medals. They get the handshakes. We get a couple of guys, athletes. We get some scouts to come down. So it's a New York theme, and we want to keep it in New York.
So, what advice do you like to give to kids nowadays when you do get the chance to talk to kids that are playing now? I know you're involved with the Players Association. What excites you about what they're doing, and what do you tell kids?
Well, I tell the kids, you know, the main thing is go out and have fun. That's the main thing. I mean, there's so much pressure on the kids now. You know, back when I was playing, there was pressure, but not like it is now. You know, everybody, you know, now with these analytics and sabermetric stuff and arm speed and bat speed and spin rate and all that stuff. Just let them go out and have fun. You know, even at a young age, let the parents tell the parents, let the kids go have fun, let them learn. You know, everybody wants to win, and everybody wants to win tournaments. So somebody has to lose, but losing's part of the game, and you have to teach to be a good loser along with a good winner. So just go out there and have fun.
100%. That's really, really cool. My friend Joe, so talking about kids, when he was a kid, he called me when he found out we were doing this, and he said, you were his favorite player growing up as a Yankees fan because his dad was in the sanitation department, and that shirt that you wore gave them a lot of pride, you know? And you've been so good to the NYPD, the FDNY, the sanitation department. You give of your time all over the city. Talk about your dad. Talk about that stuff that you would do as a player and now, and the impact he had on you.
Well, my dad was the type of parent. He never stood with the other parents. He wanted to stay alone to watch the game. And every once in a while, the other parents would creep towards him and they'll stand with him. But he didn't do much talking. He was very quiet, sit in the background. He always just say, "I'll let my son do his talking between the lines." But he was very instrumental, always driving me to the games in the parade grounds. Back in the day, it was the famous and overhand curveball. My dad used to call it the drop pitch. 12 to 6, throw the drop pitch. So he used to. I used to live in the Marlboro Projects, so right across the street from the projects was Lafayette High School, and we used to go there, and I used to throw to him, and he'd teach me the drop pitch, and before you know it, I was in Lafayette. But my dad was the type of guy. He came to every game. Sandlot. He drove, me, my friend Carl Borriello, who was one of my teammates who lived in my building in the projects. He would drive us every day. My brother Jimmy was like an assistant coach. He would come. But he was there even at St. John's. When I went to St. John's, he made his schedule around so he could make it from Brooklyn to Jamaica, Queens, just in time for the first pitch.
Wow.
And then I signed in the minor leagues. My dad, he wasn't a fly. He didn't like to fly. So he used to drive everywhere. And I never forget when we went to college. went to the College World Series in 1980, and my dad was got in his car and he's driving to Omaha, and his car broke down in Pennsylvania. So I had to come back and kind of missed that, but he drove to San Antonio with my brother, drove to Florida with my brother. So yeah, he didn't like to fly, but he was always there, very supportive. He wasn't one of those dads that got in your face, you know, if you didn't do well. He didn't scream and yell at the ballparks. And my mother, on the other hand, she hardly used to come to the games because every time she came to the game, I used to get hurt or she thought she was bad luck. So one time she came, I got hit in the eye with a pitch.
Oh no.
Throwing ball, so she thought she was bad luck, and she didn't like the other parents yelling, so she used to stay home or stay way away from the field.
It sounds like my mom. She'd put little ice cream hats on the cat and the dog just to ward off the bad luck when Benitez was pitching back in the day. So now for you, your son JJ is watching. He checked in before. He went to Poly Prep in Brooklyn, drafted out of high school by the Mets, went to Brown, which is pretty cool. Drafted by the Braves out of college, and then back with the Mets. What was that like for you now as a dad to pay it forward?
Oh, it's great. You know, again, you know, I retired, so I got to see all his games at Poly Prep. Went everywhere to watch. Then when he went to Brown, I drove up to Providence 3 times a week. I go watch the games. I'd leave Manhattan at 2 o'clock. Get up there by I'm sorry, at 11 o'clock. Get up there by 2 o'clock. Have a coffee. Had my stops along the way on 95. Watch the game, have a little dinner with him, and then drive back. You know, it's a 2.5, 3 hour drive, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because, you know, as when I was playing, I missed so much of his little league days that my father-in-law and my brother and some friends used to take JJ to their games, so I was very thankful for them. But you know, I missed a lot of his little league games. You know, my wife used to take him to those games, but then I would go to the up to Providence. I drove to Ithaca to watch him at Cornell. I drove to Harvard. I drove to Yale. I drove to Cornell. We went up to Dartmouth. So I did the whole Ivy League chain, and it was just a joy to watch him. My family and I, we would fly onto his spring trips to, you know, it's supposed to be spring trips, and we went to Northern California where it was freezing. We went to Spokane, Washington, where it was freezing in March instead of going down to a nice warm Florida or North Carolina or something.
JJ says thanks for the batting practice.
A lot of batting practice, yeah. I can still get anybody out from 30 feet, I think. But, yeah, I hit JJ tons and tons and tons, thousands and thousands of ground balls. When I was with the Mets, we had this half diamond at the spring training. He used to come down when he had off from school for 2 weeks. And I used to throw a lot of BP to him. And there was a half diamond where the infield was going. Then it's like a little league field. And I used to throw batting practice to him, and he used to try to hit home runs out of there. And finally, as he got bigger and stronger, he did. And I also used to play a game with him. I used to hit him ground balls, and I said, if we started out with the number 10, if 10 balls get by you, there's no ice cream tonight after the game. And then I chopped it down to 9, 8, 7, 6, and this kid was diving all over left to right. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun doing that.
You figured it out. Ice cream is the key. That's it. So at St. John's, you and Frank Viola were teammates. People talk about you throwing 2 no-hitters as a freshman. Talk about your time there and some of your favorite memories at St. John's.
Well, that's probably what I learned to become a pitcher. One of the main reasons why I went to St. John, I almost went to CW Post. In fact, the day before, I had dinner with the coach from CW Post, and then the next day I was pitching in a playoff game against John Jay High School. And one of my teammates that I played for Ty Cobb, a guy named Sebi Borriello and Paul Marufi, they were at St. John's already, and they had told Coach Russo about me, and Coach Russo didn't know anything. He came down to that particular game, and I threw a one-hit shutout against Luis Figueroa, who was one of the top pitchers in Brooklyn at the time. And right after the game, he offered me a full scholarship to St. John's, which I jumped on because there's a lot of good things about their pitching coach, Howie Gershberg, who to this day, if you talk to Frank Viola, he and I will both say this gentleman taught us how to pitch, how to become pitchers, and he was phenomenal. Even when I made it to the big leagues, I would go back during the wintertime and throw in front of him 3 or 4 times a year. watch games on TV, and if he saw something, he would call me up and say, "Hey, your front side's leaking out, or stay back a little bit, hide the ball a little bit more." So we had a great relationship. Unfortunately, he left us. He had developed some cancer and passed away years ago. So I dedicated the bullpens and the dugouts at St. John's to him. So he's just a great guy. He's the one that really taught Frank and I how to pitch.
And then I hear that Billy says he's a great coach, and it sounds like he really was. And he cared about you as people too. He didn't give up on you once you left. He kept it with you, you know.
Yeah, it was a lasting, a friendship that lasts forever. He's one of the coaches that I owe a lot of credit to. My high school coach, college coach, Coach Russo, for giving me the opportunity to go to St. John's. But Howie was the one that really developed Frank and I, and he liked to have fun along the way.
I hear another coach at St. John's, Lou Carnesecca, 95 years young in January, may have had an effect on you as well. What was that?
Yeah, Louis had a big effect. In fact, it's funny you bring Louis up. About 10 days ago, I got a phone call, and I didn't recognize the number. And on the other end of it was Lou checking up on me, wanting to see how I'm doing. Here's Lou Carnesecca, 95 years old, checking up on me. So, we have a great relationship. I was having some problems at St. John's my freshman year, and he brought me into the office and read me the riot act and told me, what opportunity I have, and the only thing I had to do was bring him cannolis from Brooklyn every Friday, and that would square the deal. So that's what we did, and we had a long-lasting relationship. He's one of my favorite people.
That's awesome. I love that he's checking up on you too. So you're about as New York and as Brooklyn as it comes. You're from Gravesend. You went to Lafayette High School, St. John's University. Can you talk about the caliber of baseball in New York City and what can be done to continue to grow the game here and get it recognition that it deserves?
Caliber of baseball right now in New York City?
Yep.
Well, I haven't seen much lately because I've been still working with the Mets for the years, but I haven't seen too many high school games. I know that the caliber isn't as high as it was. I feel personally it wasn't as high as it was when I played, and I think that a lot of kids have lost a lot of interest in that. So that's why one of the reasons why we try to form this Borough Cup is to keep the kids interested. Baseball is kind of a slow game where kids now get the soccer, the basketball, the football, movement, even hockey, lacrosse. So we got to try to keep them involved as much as we can, doing clinics, teaching. Making it fun for them to come out and to get involved in the game. Not every game is going to go fast. A lot of games go slow. Thank God. In the little leagues, there's 2-hour time limits, 5-run rules in the inning. But we just got to get them involved and try to preach. This is your way out. It was my way out of the neighborhood to be successful and make something of me. And a lot of hard work goes into it. You have to put a lot of hard work into it. Nobody's going to give it to you. I mean, growing up, my friends used to go away and they used to go to the Hamptons or wherever they went, but I was still playing ball, and I'd be hanging out with them and they would say, "Oh, we did this, we did that." And I was just, I missed all of that, but I dedicated myself to something that I love and it works. But like I said before, it's a lot of hard work. I think you got a lot of credit to the Sandlot coaches. You got a lot of credit to the high school coaches because they're out there trying to help these kids along. And I always say, for kids in high school, and he's a pretty good player, not everybody's going to get drafted. But if you can get a kid into a college, you succeeded because now you can help him get a good education and to play baseball.
100%. And no robot umpires back in your day.
What's that?
I said no robot umpires back in your day. That'll speed the game up a little bit.
But I'm more like robots, trust me.
So you were drafted in the 5th round in '81 by the Dodgers. And on draft day, you're not home, but you're at Abraham Lincoln High School, not your high school, in Coney Island. And Billy Blitzer may have played a role in that day. You want to talk about your draft day and what happened?
Well, I was at the Lincoln High School. The St. John's season had ended, so I was going to watch my high school team play Lincoln, and it was draft day, and I didn't want to stay home. I was kind of nervous. And I'll never forget Billy Blitzer and a scout from the Braves, Bob Tizilli, was there also. And they had asked me if I had heard anything, and I said, no, not yet. And I remember, I think it was Bob. I don't remember offhand if it was Bob or Billy that made the phone call. And they came back to me and said, well, they've been through 30 rounds and we haven't heard nothing yet. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then they started laughing. They said, no, you got drafted in the 5th round. And I was like, by who? And they said, the Dodgers. And I said, wow, that's great. I ran from Lincoln High School all the way to the Marlboro Projects where I grew up. I came home, ran up 7 flights of steps. As soon as I got home, about 5 minutes later, I told my mom and dad, and 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was Gil Passetti and Steve Lembo on the phone. Those were the 2 Dodger scouts who had drafted me. And the thing about the Dodgers was when they used to have these back in the day Dodger tryouts, and you'd be invited to have it at Lincoln, Poly Prep High School. And I used to go there, and I always got invited with them. And something that they liked about me, and Gil and Steve were always gave me the opportunity. Then they brought in the cross-checker, I believe it was, Dick Teets, who was the big guy. And once I got drafted by the Dodgers, I just thanked both of them because they believed in me. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I have a big heart and a very competitive guy. And they gave me an opportunity to play professional baseball. And then from there, they gave me an opportunity. I got my foot in the door. Now I have to take care of it. And once I got to the Dodgers, it was great. I had a great pitching coach in Dave Wallace in Vero Beach, who I owe a lot to. Very good friends. He was our pitching coach for the Mets in 2000 when we went to the World Series. So he taught me a lot about pitching also. So I owe a lot to the Dodger organization.
So we got some audience questions flowing in here. What hitter were you the most afraid to face as a pitcher in the major leagues?
Well, I have to tell you, we always had this kind. I wasn't the big hitters. I didn't have no problems. The hitters like, well, obviously Tony Gwynn could hit with his eyes closed. I had problems with Tony Gwynn. Mariano Duncan he was with the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Phillies. For some reason, I had a tough time with Mariano Duncan and a guy named for the Cubs named Bob Denier. Contact hitters. Those three guys really gave me headaches. And a guy named Glenn Allen Hill who got about 3 or 4 pinch hit home runs against me. So those guys are tough times. But as far as the big hitters, I've had very good success. Coming up against Mike Schmidt. I had success against Bill Madlock. I had success against George Hendricks. I had success against Barry Bonds. Barry would get some hits off of me. I would get him out. Sammy Sosa, McGuire. Those guys I had pretty good success with. But Tony Gwynn was a thorn in my side.
What was the moment you knew that you were going to go to the big leagues?
When I got the phone call, it was really funny because when I was with the Dodgers, then I got traded to Cincinnati. And I'll never forget, we were on a road trip, and we just came back from Evansville, Indiana, and I was in Wichita, Kansas. That's where we were. That's where our home field was. And it was about 8 in the morning, and we just got in about 5 in the morning off the bus, so we went home to sleep. And the phone rang, and it was my manager, Gene Dusan, and he used to call me Guido. Hey, Guido, and I thought someone was messing me. And he said, Guido, it's Gino. Get dressed. You got to meet the team in Atlanta. And I said, oh, come on. And I hung up on him. And then he called again, and he had some choice words, and he said, no, and my roommate was Ron, and he wasn't fooling. I packed my bags up, and in fact, tomorrow is April 24th. That's when I got called up to the big leagues, April 24th, 1984, because it's my wife's birthday also. So that's how I remember how I got called up. So I got called up. I met the team in Atlanta, and I'll never forget coming through the lobby. I had like 3 or 4 bags, and the equipment manager, Bernie Stowe, was in the lobby, and he says, I guess you're thinking about staying for a while. I said, I don't want to go back to Wichita. So, fortunate for me, I did pretty well, and I wound up staying for the big leagues for almost 22 years.
You knew your wife at the time, too, because you met in high school. So what did you guys do to celebrate that?
Well, I was away in Atlanta, and she was home in New York. So we weren't married at the time. We were still dating, and it was a good birthday gift for her and a good gift for me.
So you were traded to the Mets in '89 in the offseason for Randy Myers, who has the 3rd most lefty saves of all time. And you went to end your career with the most saves ever by a lefty pitcher in Major League Baseball history. Talk about your time with the Mets after you were traded and a couple of your favorite Mets memories.
Well, as a dream come true, I grew up a Mets fan. My favorite player was Tug McGraw and Tom Seaver. And but it was funny leading up to that trade. I was with Cincinnati still, and I'll never forget. I got a phone call from our GM at the time. It was Murray Cook from the
I know Murray.
and he had called me and he said, "Hey, we're thinking about extending you, and we want to give you maybe a 3-year contract. What are you looking for?" And I said, I really haven't thought about it. Let me speak to my agent." And that was like right before the winter meeting. And then they had hired Lou Pernella, and they said Lou had called me and said he wanted to meet me for lunch in New Jersey, because I think he was living in New Jersey at the time. And I said, sure. And then 2 days later, the phone rang. And there was always talk about me getting traded to the Yankees. Nothing about the Mets, always about the Yankees. And I never forget, we got a phone call, and the GM said that you've been traded to New York. And I said, oh, okay. And I hung up the phone. And I said, I got traded to New York, but it wasn't. I didn't know it was the Mets until Joe McIlvaine called me. And then I realized it was the Mets. So it was a pretty exciting night in the Franco household. We had, we celebrated. And then the rest is history. From 1990 to 2004, I was part of a Met organization where I owe a lot to. They gave me an opportunity to play at home and don't have to uproot my family to move to other parts of the country. The toughest part about that was, they would come to spring training for 2 weeks in Florida while the kids had off, which was great. And but it was a great run. I had a lot of good times. Met a lot of great teammates. Great organization for me to play in. Unfortunately, we didn't get to the World Series. We didn't get to the playoffs until later in my career in '99, and then in 2000 in the World Series. But I enjoyed every moment of it.
And then the Hall of Fame for the Mets and becoming captain. What were those two things like for you?
Very exciting. Becoming captain of the Mets, especially as a relief pitcher, it's very rare. And for my teammates to respect me enough to make me a captain is really really heartwarming for me, because I knew that my teammates really respected me and they liked me, and as a leader, I could be the guy that they come to, and I would be the guy to go between them and coaches or managers or GM or owner if there was something. I was also the player rep for the union at the time too, so I was involved in our work stoppages and stuff like that. But it was very heartwarming that they would think of me as the leader, and especially as a relief pitcher. So it meant a lot to me.
So clearly the Mets had a thing for lefty closers, because we talked about you, we talked about Randy Myers, and Billy Wagner ended up on the Mets too. Were you sweating it out in 2010? Were you watching him when he was closing games, closing in on your record? Because he said he was going to retire. He got within 2. Were you watching him while he was pitching?
I know Billy a long time, and Billy's a little bigger than I am, not much bigger. He's tremendous arm. Records are made to be broken, and if anybody was going to do it, and if Billy did it, I'd be happy for him. He's a good guy, a good competitor. Unfortunate for him, fortunate for me, he retired 2 behind me, I believe. So, he had an injury along the way, and I had injuries along the way. I missed the whole season with Tommy John surgery, and I believe Billy missed the whole season with Tommy John surgery also. So who knows, if we didn't miss those seasons, maybe we'd be closer to 600 saves instead of 4.
So you were the pitching coach for Team Italy in the World Baseball Classic. That must have been a pretty cool thing. Can you talk about what that experience was like?
It's pretty cool. I just had, I remember I was with Houston Astros in 2005. I got released like July 3rd or 4th, right before 4th of July it was. And came home, waited around a while to see. There were some teams that were still interested in me. But at the end of July, I got a phone call from I think it was the Yankees or the Cardinals. They wanted me to go to minor leagues, and I felt like sitting at home for 3 weeks, and for me to go into the minor leagues, and then try to get in the playoffs, I don't think it'd be fair for me and fair for that team if I wasn't ready or not. So at that particular time, we decided to just call it an end of a career. And then a couple of days later, I was on a plane to Italy. I'd never been to Italy before. My wife's family is from Italy, so we went to the town that her parents grew up in. And while we were there, I got a phone call from Matt Galante, who was the third base coach for the Mets and a good friend of mine. And he became manager. He was going to manage the Team Italy. He called me and he said, "Would you like to be pitching coach for me for Team Italy?" I said, funny that you're talking to me right now because I'm on a balcony overlooking a vineyard right now. And it's just a coincidence that that happened. And I said, sure. But once we got back, it was the first year the World Classic was going on. And I
Right.
had a lot of fun meeting a lot of young players, a couple of players from Italy that were with the team, and also a lot of Italian American kids who were with other various organizations. Got to know them. Mike Piazza was still playing. He was a DH catching at the time. Frank Menachino was our hitting coach. So Gary Deep, third base coach for the Mets, was a coach there also. And I got to know a couple of kids, and the experience of the Classic was great. It was a lot of fun. It was great for baseball where the teams are representing their countries. Unfortunately, we got into a tough bracket. We were in, I think, Australia. We beat Australia, but we lost to the Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. So it was a tough bracket.
Yeah. We got a couple questions. So here's one from Lenny. What's your favorite memory from your most recent trip to Italy?
I was just in Italy this summer, so we went to Sicily. My wife and my son and my daughter. We drove all over. I just think that just the culture itself, the food, the towns that we went to, uh, and I got to drive. I drove the whole time there, so it was a pretty good experience doing that. But just the culture, going into the little towns, especially the town where my wife's family is from. At the time, it was like 4,000, 4,500 people. Seeing how they live, uh, seeing how they've been organic for so many years, picking the vegetables right out of the backyard and putting them on the table. And it was just a great experience. Obviously, the food and the wine, and the people were great. And obviously,
Here's this is from Diane. How do you have a funny story about Lee Mazzilli?
not that I can tell right now. No, Lee Mazzilli, Lee Mazzilli was, he's a few years older than I am. He was the guy that all us Italian, not Italians, but all the Brooklyn baseball players looked up to because he was like the first one that we really kind of knew him. Lee Mazzilli, Pete Falcone, who pitched for Lafayette High School, Dallas Williams is another guy. Those were the guys that we kind of looked up to. But Lee was, he was Mr. GQ, Mr. Good Looking. He's the Sergio Valente model, Still good for Lee. We have a lot of fun with him now. He does a great job in doing his fundraiser for his brother who passed away of lung disease, and he does the Fred Mazzilli Foundation, a dinner every year, and we go to and support him. So, and he has a great family. His wife Danny and his two daughters and his son.
All right, so we're at the part of the show where we do rapid fire. So I'm going to say things to you, and you tell me what the first thing that comes to your mind is. Favorite player growing up? You said Tug McGraw before, but
Tug McGraw, Tom Seaver.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate chip.
What was JJ's favorite flavor that got him to play so well?
JJ, he would change up on me, but he was a vanilla chocolate guy growing up.
Favorite baseball movie?
The Lou Gehrig story.
Favorite non-New York ballpark?
Non-New York ballpark. I like the older ballparks. I like Wrigley Field. I like Boston, and I like Detroit when we went to Detroit.
And favorite holiday?
Favorite holiday is Christmas Eve. 7 fishes that we get to eat. I love the Christmas and Christmas Eve.
You did well. Very good. All right. So next thing here, we talk a lot about the pandemic. You did this awesome video for us, just telling people to stay safe, encouraging them. That was awesome. There's been a lot of negative, but what are the best things that you've seen, the most positive things that have made you really happy during this time, and how has your experience been dealing with this?
Well, the best thing we see is how the New Yorkers are pulling together. Going back to 9/11, when what happened here in 9/11, how the New Yorkers pulled together and stuck together. Again, we're following the rules. Everyone's staying home, being safe, wearing the mask. When you do go out, everybody's doing their best job to stay, keeping their social distancing. But I'm very impressed the way the governor has been leading the city and the state on how keeping us updated on how the coronavirus is affecting the state. It's unfortunate we've lost so many lives to it, and so many people have suffered. But I'm hoping that one day that they will find a cure for this and a vaccine, and we could all get on with life again. But right now, we just have to follow the rules, and I'm very impressed with the way the city is coming together, sticking together.
So Dan Palumbo says that you really pulled people together during 9/11. Can you talk about the Piazza home run, that whole experience for you guys as players?
Well, it was, we were in Pittsburgh when the 9/11 happened. I remember we were supposed to have a union meeting that day, and Don Fear was in Pittsburgh, and he had called my room and said he has to fly home because the plane crashed into the Trade Center, and we didn't think it was a big plane or nothing, but did not knowing until we put the news on, and then I was on the phone with my wife Rose, and the second plane crashed, and it was like, oh man, this is serious. So we were in Pittsburgh, and a plane went down outside of Pittsburgh also, and our hotel was right next to a federal building. So right away they moved us out of the hotel, and we went up into the mountains in Pittsburgh somewhere. I never forget, we stayed at a Marriott somewhere in the mountains for like 3 days, not knowing when to come home, not knowing if baseball was ever going to resume. And then finally they told us yes. We jumped on a bus. We drove 8 hours from Pittsburgh to get home. And as we were coming over the George Washington Bridge, guys were talking, and then all of a sudden there's just silence on the bus because everybody on the left side of the bus came over to the right, and all you saw was the smoke and the lights from Ground Zero. And as we got to the ballpark, we said our goodbyes, not knowing when. And finally, when they said, we could resume, we started working out. But the thing that I remember most was how we went down to Ground Zero with Bobby Valentine. Bobby Valentine was a great leader at that time. If you ever want somebody in a foxhole with you, that's the guy, because he led the team on the field, but off the field too. When we at the staging station at Citi Field, we would work out, and every man on that team came out there, and we unloaded tractor trailers for water, batteries, gloves, clothes, boots, whatever they needed. And we were out there for a couple of hours. But I never forget when we went down to Ground Zero. It was Bobby, Mike Piazza, Al Leiter, myself. I think it was Todd Zeal and Robin Ventura, Jay Horowitz, and John Stearns. And just going down Zero, we had some T-shirts and hats that we wanted to give out to the rescue workers, because when you went down there, it looked like it was something out of a theme park, out of Universal Studios, how the metal was twisted in the smoke. And I'll never forget the police officer who was showing us around said, if you hear one bullhorn, just be aware. If you hear two bullhorns, start walking a little quicker. And three bullhorns, I want you guys to run and follow me, because there was still steel hanging down from the buildings and so on and so forth. But fortunate for us, we didn't have no bullhorns that day, which was nice. But we went around, we thanked every police officer, fireman. You could just see they were happy, to see us, but you could see at their face the hard work and sadness of losing their brothers and sisters who worked for the fire department, police department. We were on a roof of one of the firehouses on Liberty Street, just seeing how everything was going along. So it was so sad to be down there, but we were glad to be down there. We wanted to help whichever way we can. But getting back to the game, when the games did resume, going to the ballpark was a lot different, because now when you pulled into the players' lot, there was police out there with bomb sniffing dogs, and they had mirrors that would check underneath your cars to see if there were any bombs or whatever. And then as you went into the locker room, as you were in the locker room, again, the police officer came in there with the dogs and sniffing everybody's locker. And during batting practice, you could see that the police department and whatever law enforcement agencies, there were snipers all around the stadium. And but it was just totally different, And then once the game started, the national anthem, the God Bless America. But the thing that hit me the most is when we were on first base line and the Braves were on the third base line. And after everything was done, we came together. The Braves were a thorn in our side. And for one time, we all came together, and we united as one, And I think the Braves were pulling for us to win that game too, But I think when everything was so quiet, the stadium was kind of quiet. There was about 45,000 people there. And I think it was so quiet. But I think once Mike hit that home run, I mean, I still get hair, my hair stands up on my arms when I talk about it. When Mike hit that home run, it was a sign of relief that everybody could celebrate for something, just for a little bit. You know, we were just a band-aid for 2.5, 3 hours from what happened down at ground zero. But when Mike hit that home run, you could turn around, and as all the players were on the bench, we see people hugging, screaming, crying, waving the flags, chanting USA, and it was just something that you'll never forget, something that you'll never be part of. And I remember seeing an interview with Chipper Jones, and Chipper Jones was saying that when Mike came up in that situation, he looked over to center field at Andrew Jones because he was playing left field, and he said he didn't like that matchup. And before you know it, Mike hit a home run. But the ironic thing in that game was there were three guys in that game who were all from the New York area. Myself, Jason Marquis started the game, and Steve Carsey from Queens unfortunately gave up the home run to Mike. So there are three local guys involved in that game, and we were part of something that for a little while we let the people of New York forget about what happened. But that's something that you'll never forget.
What do you think sets New Yorkers apart? In your experience, New York fans, you're from here. What is it about New Yorkers?
Well, they're very, very knowledgeable. They'll let you know if you're not doing well, but they love their teams. They're very supportive. They love winners, and they just love the game of baseball. Both Met fan and Yankee fans. And I've been to some parts of the country that were pretty bad too. So New York gets a bad rap, but there were some places that we have been to, especially during the playoffs in 2000. It was kind of crazy.
So I saw your Instagram post from Easter weekend. I hear your wife helped videotape that. You made meatloaf while listening to Meatloaf. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah.
So what
That's,
is your best dish?
uh, I like to make a nice sausages and peppers. I make that pretty good. I make a nice salmon. Salmon with I put some spinach on the bottom as the bed, the salmon on top of it, and then I put some sautéed mushrooms on top of that. So that's a pretty good dish. I like I make a pasta with sausage and broccoli rabe, which is probably one of my favorite. But I enjoy cooking since I retired, and it's something that keeps me going. You know, I'm learning new dishes. My wife cooked for me for all the years when I played. So now since I retired, I'm cooking for her. Her family's great cooks. So my oldest daughter is a good cook. So uh, we just like to eat. You know, we're Italians. We like to eat.
Well, the fans like it, so maybe a cookbook or keep doing those videos. But those are funny. I would say keep going
Yeah,
with that.
I'm doing that. I'm trying to come up with some other songs while I'm cooking and some other dishes. I'm sure we'll do one in the next couple of days, but it's something to keep everybody loose and laugh a little bit during these tough times.
All right. So the next part here, I'm going to show you some baseball cards. We got about 10 or 12 minutes left till the hour, but I'm going to show you some baseball cards, and you tell me what you remember about these players. All right.
Okay.
So the first one here, Cyclones manager last year, Edgardo Alfonso.
Fonzie's clutch hitter, good athlete. Uh, he was the quiet assassin on the team, and that guy got some big hits for us. A good defender.
All right. This one is a Tom Seaver card. Seaver named Rookie of the Year. Tom, terrific.
Yeah, one of my favorite. You know, growing up watching Tom Seaver, and I got to meet him. I was out in Napa Valley for my 50th birthday, and went over to Tom's house and his vineyard, and got to see how he's living and how his wine. And we had some wine with him and his wife Nancy. Great guy. I wish him nothing but the best. We miss him. Unfortunately, you know, his ailments are keeping him away from the Met organization. But I'm so happy that they're finally putting a statue, and they named their street after Tom Seaver.
All right. Let's see. Super Joe McEwing is a Cardinal.
Super Joe is that's one of JJ's favorite guys, and JJ and Joe JJ would be right on the side of Joe. Joe is the type of guy. He's a great teammate, always positive. He's going to make a great big league manager. Uh, but he was the type of guy that could play every position. The type of guy that you need on your team, and He always used to break in JJ's gloves for him when I got a new glove for JJ. So great guy.
Ron Darling.
Ron Darling and I were funny. Not too many people know. Ron Darling and I were roommates in the Cape Cod League, in the college league. But the thing you remember with Ron Darling, not only I was a teammate with him for I think a year and a half, but his game against Frank Viola in college, where he threw a no-hitter for 11 innings at Yale, and we wound up beating him 1-0. So that was one of the greatest games. And he's
Last
pretty
one
good.
here. Yeah, pretty good. Last one here, Turk Wendell. And then once you talk about him, we have everyone guess how many stats. So how many strikeouts did Turk have on this year once you talk about him?
Well, Turk was a guy that kept the bullpen loose. You know, there were times you would come in early for batting practice, and we would see like a decoy deer in center field. There would be a whole bunch of arrows around it, and there was Turk and the second level at Shea Stadium shooting arrows at the deer. He always had I think it was bear teeth or some type of teeth around his neck. He was a big time hunter. Made a great beef jerky. And bring it in. He was a lot of fun to be around. Great teammate. He worked very, very hard also.
This year, let's see. This was 1994. How many strikeouts do you think he had?
How many innings?
It was 14 major league innings. So this is a trick question, I guess.
How many strikeouts did he have in the big leagues or in the minor leagues?
In big leagues, in 14 innings.
14 innings. How many strikeouts he had? I would say 11 or 12.
You're close. It's 9. There you go. Not bad.
Yeah.
I have one more special because the NFL draft's going on right now. Pat Mahomes.
Pat Mahomes was Mr. Everything for us. You know, he started, he relieved, he was a big part of the 99 team, 2000 team. And also, I remember little Pat coming at the stadium with his little bat and ball in the outfield and throwing the ball to him and hitting the ball. I'm so happy the way his professional career has turned out as probably the best quarterback in football right now. So I'm happy for the Mahomes family. Pat was a great guy.
So we got 33 people. Instead of watching the draft, they're watching us. So that's pretty cool. So we just have a couple minutes left here. I'm going to ask another audience question, and then I'll get to my last question here. So JJ says, did you brush Teddy the dog's teeth today?
Yes, I did. Inside joke. Funny.
All right, and let's see. What meat do you use for your meatballs?
What meat do I use for meat? Let's use a regular ground beef. You could also use veal. You could use some pork. I just use just plain ground beef with some breadcrumb, a lot of grated cheese. You know, mix a little egg in there, squish it all together. But you could do a veal, you could do pork, whichever you prefer.
And one more. Favorite pizza place in Brooklyn?
I got a couple of them. One of my favorite places is Carmine's Pizza in Brooklyn. He's a good friend of mine now. L&B Pizza, Joe and Pat's Pizza from Staten Island. I mean, they're here in the city now, so there's a couple of good places. But Carmine's Pizza, who's a friend of mine down in Williamsburg, Carmine Pizza and Son. A little free advertising for Carmine. Real pizza, like I said, but I like L&B Pizza in Brooklyn, Spumoni Gardens.
Edgardo's here. He says, what about chicken and rice? Edgardo Alfonso's here too.
Chicken and rice is good too. Puts a lot of meat on your bones, man. That sticks to your bones with chicken and rice. That's how fun to hit all those home runs with chicken and rice. Last question for you. This is the last one we ask everybody. What does baseball mean to you, John Franco? Baseball means to me. It's given me everything I have today. It's given me to live comfortable. It's given me a chance to see parts of the country, parts of the world that I probably have never been to, and it's just given me a chance to meet some great people along the way, great teammates, great coaches, and just all in all, it gave me a good life, and I just enjoyed every minute of it. Anything else you want to cover for the people watching? Anything that you're thinking about messages right now before we hop off? All I like to say is just everybody just stay strong. We'll get through this together, and I'm sure there will be a baseball season sometime this year. But stay strong, stay safe, and stay healthy for everyone and their families watching.
Thank you very much for that. John, thank you for joining us. This was the Duke Show because you played for them in Albuquerque. So we
Put up
were,
some love in Albuquerque.
yeah, we really appreciate it. And we do this every Monday and Thursday. But thank you so much, John, for joining us. We'll do this again soon and have a great evening.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Bye, John. Take care, everybody.